There he is.
All right, are we in?
Yeah,
We
we're
are
already
in.
good.
What's
Sorry,
up, man?
it's been a
What up?
bit.
What up? What up?
It's good to finally meet you. I've heard a lot about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard a lot about you as well through Trey and I guess just Trey mostly, honestly.
That's awesome. Hopefully, all good things.
Yeah, for sure. All good things. Kind of just throwing gas, Michigan training life, that kind of thing.
Gritty,
Yeah.
just
Gritty.
making it work. So, what are you up to now, man? What have you been doing?
So obviously took the job with Tread back in March. So been kind of doing that. Obviously I was like kind of doing my own thing in Nashville, or not own thing. I worked for someone, but like for all intents and purposes, ran the entire facility. And that was like a really good experience. And then now taking the opportunity to tread, getting trained some like higher level guys, get access to some different resources and things like that has been huge.
What do you think? I don't want to turn this into like question answer. That's like the one thing I want to avoid. So
For
please,
sure.
um, but like, what do you think you learned from tread that you didn't really necessarily get to learn from operating ward on your own?
A lot of it has to do on the actually applying things to in game. So I think when you're, working in a facility, especially with a lot of low level guys, college, high school, et cetera, there's such an emphasis placed on velocity development. And that's what you get really, really good at. And then when you get to tread, it's like, all right, well, now you're getting, assigned athletes that don't necessarily need velocity. They need help with, in-game approach, usage, more pitch design stuff like in depth. And so like just getting hands-on with stuff like True Media, Edgertronic, things like that, and actually putting together reports and actually honestly becoming a little bit more of a baseball coach rather than just like a throwing guy, if that makes sense. Like I feel
No,
much
hundred
better.
percent, 100%.
I
Because I
feel
feel like
much better about making someone better at the actual game of baseball now than I did, a year ago.
Yeah.
absolutely no, that totally makes sense. Because I feel like, and Trey can attest to this too. But like working at Primetime Velocity in the years that I have, my role has been with their high school program, and like you said with Ward, it's a lot of it is working with that younger group of kids, and it turns into all of these kids need velo right now. And we get the occasional one off like Trey. We worked with Ryan Zapiniak, who was going to Michigan State, or even get some draft looks out of high school. But um, he needed work and refinement in the more specific areas in the game. But by and large, most of our clientele is we need to find a way to get them to throw harder to allow them to play college baseball. So that's cool you have the opportunity to work with that stuff. I personally have never worked with True Media. We didn't use a database like that. I think we had our own for our own organization, but I've seen it, and I can imagine that that's a massive adjustment for you, and it opens a ton of doors for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of complete game changer. And I think when you're just like working in a facility, it's very easy to become one dimensional, even though you don't want to become that way. Like there's nothing out you like, you know what I mean? You have your toolbox, you've seen what works with guys, like you have your coaching style, and it becomes very easy to just like apply that without even consciously thinking about it. Like I can just get this guy a quick 3 miles an hour and he's going to be like extremely happy. And you just kind of go down that route. Whether or not he goes out in the spring and actually performs at a high level in game, like at least he's throwing 3 miles an hour harder or whatever. Like it's just like such a different mindset, I guess, is like from actually just throwing guys, like from the pure physical side of things, like teaching them about like throwing patterns, plow drills, getting all those newbie gains, to actually taking a guy and being like, okay, dude, like this is how hitters are just absolutely destroying you. We need like a full on strategy.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I guess, you touched on one thing in there. You talked about the um not necessarily difficulty, but the acclimation process it takes to learn like what athletes need in terms of a coaching style. How long does that take you? I'm guessing that's an individual thing. Uh, I think that's a very cool thing that you've even recognized. It's something that I've recognized over the year, but again, it's still, or over the years, excuse me, but it's still kind of a broad thing where I guess my first coaching gig, it was like, this is awesome. I have power. I've never been on this side. And now it's the the ability to recognize that these conversations you have with athletes, they stick a lot longer with them than they do with you. So you kind of have to value those in that manner, or that have that perspective. So I guess back to the original question, what do you see from guys that makes you go one way or the other? Or, what is it about that process that's so much fun for you?
Yeah. For me, obviously that personal relationship kind of drives a lot of that. One thing I've always enjoyed about in-person training specifically is this sense of being in the trenches with the athlete. Like I'm doing my own lifting with them, I'm doing their throwing, like some of what they're doing in their program, they're going to see me doing in my program as well. Like this isn't me just copying out of a textbook or whatever it may be and just giving it to them. Like the stuff that I think is going to work for you, like I think will work for me as well. Like I'm also trying to improve myself, and things like that. And so like getting that sense of being right there with the athlete is something I still get a little bit of at Tread. You know what I mean? Like we have like, several guys in gym at a time and like used to, but that, I feel like that feeling of like really being in the trenches with them, like literally doing the lifts with them, whatever it may be that you get in like a smaller facility environment. um I mean, it's just like invaluable for, okay, like I'm literally lifting with this guy. He said he doesn't like this variation of bench press or this variation of whatever I've given him, or he doesn't like this plyo drill. And then you literally work with him one on one to figure that problem out in real time. Like that's kind of what it's all about, in my mind. And obviously, like, you can do some of that in remote. Like you can have phone calls and you can text athletes, but obviously that feedback loop is just so much larger. Um,
Without a doubt.
so yeah, so just like building that
Yeah.
personal relationship up, I guess, is the answer to the question.
Yeah, because to jump in off that, like, because I mean, me and you are a lot closer than most a couple of the other guys, especially Max. He doesn't know as much as your background as I do. But the cool thing, you referenced that you're doing it with them. But like the cool thing is too, like if you can elaborate and kind of explain your injury history as well, because I think that explains a lot too. You're not some guy that played a completely different sport, got a CSCS, and is just trying to teach guys how to throw without having understanding. So it's like when you're doing all these rehabs, what I mean? Kind of just that side of things where you've been through it as well on that front. You know what I mean? So there's also that like
Yeah.
spirituality part of the injury as well as like physically you went through these same pains.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I could just fill in, I guess, a little bit about my playing history. So I usually started out with like telling guys, I'm like, dude, I didn't throw a ball over 92 miles an hour until I was like 22 years old, which sounds ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking back on it, like I was always like a decent baseball player, like a decent pitcher. And I knew at a very early age that I needed to throw harder to kind of make it to pro ball. Like I'm in high school with like some of the best stats, like these are like video game stats. And I'm getting offers to like low level mid majors. And my friends that throw 95, 96 with terrible stats, like they just spray the ball, they're getting to go to Vandy. And so it was very apparent to me early on that like I needed to throw harder and things like that. And so that led me down this like velocity journey, trained out a drive line, kind of got exposed to that whole aspect of things. And so that just like is what started it. So I had, from the injury side of things, I've had TJ, labrum surgery, 2 knee surgeries, right? It's just like all over the place, like with the injuries. Some of them are baseball related, some of them are just like completely random. Like especially with the knees, the cartilage in my knees just is dog shit. Like it's just not very it's just not good, right? Like the doctor literally the first time he saw it, he's like, oh, that's like a fluke thing, like no big deal. And then it happened to my other knee, and then my labrum, which is also cartilage. For those who aren't aware, right? Like it started getting messed up, and then the doctor literally just came up to me. He's like, "Dude, I think you just have like terrible cartilage. Like I'm not sure what the deal is." He was explaining. He's like, "It's actually supposed to be like kind of rubbery and malleable." And mine, he thinks is just like very rigid and like prone to like flaking off, or, like breaking off into pieces.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like obviously, even starting with TJ rehab at the University of Memphis when I played there, I just did my entire own rehab. Like I literally took my fast food money, bought a radar gun, bought a Stalker LED board, obviously had my plyos and things like that. I bought a Motus sleeve at the time. And I was just like, I'm gonna write my own rehab. Like there's like nothing this school can do to stop me. Like I was already pretty pissed off at them for not letting me get an MRI when I knew I needed it. And so like the fact that they were going to try to tell me then like how to do my rehab, I was just like completely over it. And I think that first rehab is kind of what started this whole process of like deep diving into biomechanics, strength and conditioning, throwing. Like I was pretty determined to come back better than I'd ever been before. And so that was 2018. And then I had knee surgery in the middle of TJ rehab. But I came back like through 93 in one of those games at Memphis. They were all bad. And then that summer when I got out of Memphis, I just trained myself. And then that summer is the summer I kind of like first pin after training myself with like 3 months was like 94, 97. And then just kind of climb from there.
Yeah, because I think that's the cool thing though is like, yeah, like you might lift with people, but also it's a different thing too. And like if you're writing a guy's stuff and it's like, oh, this dude had the same injury, knows what like an anchor pain is like with the labrum specifically, like we've talked about it, like what an anchor pain is versus what like
Mm.
real shoulder pain, you know what I mean? Just like going through it, like where I should be at, like what's a good marking point. So I think that's definitely like one of the bigger things though too, like in a coach is like a lot of guys haven't experienced like A or B, you know what I mean? So it's like the
Yeah.
ability to even like spiritually understand like the pain, what's going on, all that stuff is like it's pretty sick. Even though it's shitty, 100%. Like it's still like a
Yeah,
cool like, edge to have.
I
for
mean,
sure. And I think too, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, I was just gonna feed off of that. I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with what Trey just said. But you mentioned you bought all the equipment for yourself, of course, but then you talked about the deep dive you did into it, or how you were inspired to take the deep dive. Where is it that you went to do that? Not necessarily a school or anything like that, but or maybe it was, but where did you go to do that deep dive?
Yeah, I think at the time, the Drive On baseball blog was kind of like one of the best sources of information out there. It's still out there. Like I tell every single person that like kind of goes down this path. I'm like, dude, like you need to go to the blog and you need to go all the way back to like 2016 and you need to just to read every single article because that's kind of what I did. And it'll honestly set you up for like a super good foundation of how to think about problems and things like that. Also like the Just Fly a Sports Performance podcast, like Rob Hill at the time put me on to like Stephen Jones and some things like that from the cricket side of things. But it was just all over, right? My main goal was to get out of baseball, like strength and conditioning, out of like baseball, like training per se, and like just become a better athlete. Because that was a thing that just stuck out to me. Like I would look at every other sport, even just something as simple as like football, or you look at like javelin as like the one that everyone looks at. Like these dudes are freaks, like they're freak athletes lifting heavy upper body, doing everything baseball players are told not to. And I just wanted to kind of like tap into some of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. Trey and I have definitely done research in that category as well. Trey probably more so than I. I think the different sports thing is fascinating. I've looked at like you mentioned football. I think place kickers do a great job of training their hamstring strength and flexibility, and I think that plays a large role in kind of like what we do. Small application, but application nonetheless. Um, I think I picked out one other thing you talked about kind of in that overview of yourself, and you talked about the early upcomings of your story or upbringing of your story, and how maybe you weren't the hardest throwing guy, but dudes were spraying it and getting the chance to commit to Vandy. And this is more of like a vague opinion question, but do you think with the emphasis on big schools using the transfer portal to recruit that there's going to be a higher emphasis on guys being able to execute at the highest level in high school? Do you think that there's going to be a new market for that almost, or maybe small, but a market nonetheless?
I think it's going to be more of just like the best players are going to be the only ones that get to go. Like no longer does the Power Five school need to take a risk on a guy that's like 90, 92, that's like could be good, could be like okay. Now they can just let that guy go to like Arkansas State or something for a year and
Right.
just see for themselves. Like there's no need for me to like take the risk. I know for a fact if I let this guy go to a Lipscomb, for instance, for 2 years, I'm going to be able to get him his junior year and know whether or not he's like good or not. I don't necessarily have to put in the heavy front end work.
It's honestly fascinating because it's reshaping the entire kind of recruiting landscape. Sorry. And it's such a trickle down effect. I look at the barometer for where I went to school at Northwood, and when I went there, I was a guy who could touch 84, and there's no way I'm getting an offer from a Division II school today, sitting 80, 82 up to 84. It just doesn't happen. It's just like I said, it's absolutely fascinating what the transfer portal and the ability of those coaches, like you said, to even poach kids from mid-major D1s halfway through or even late into their career is doing, the ripple effect that it's having on high schoolers itself.
For sure. I think the biggest losers in the whole situation, and I've said this before, like talking with some colleagues, is JUCOs. Like I know
Yeah.
I'm a JUCO guy, Trey's a JUCO guy.
Yeah.
Like their ability to kind of recruit, a guy, um, or whatever just kind of goes out the window because their main selling point was like, hey, like you can come in here for a year, you can come in here for 2 years, and then go to a D1 and another D1. Like there's all these hoops to jump through, like
Sure.
academically. Like there wasn't a transfer portal. And so JUCOs are just enormous losers. Like I would say the quality of play, like the quality of JUCO arms had to have gone down. Because that just seems like the most logical thing. With the transfer portal being the huge emphasis now.
Yeah, because you don't even need to go JUCO. You can still go make scholarship money probably at a mid major and then just
Better facilities.
on it. And then if not, you're still Division 1. There's no risk of okay, I go to a JUCO, I blow out, don't blow out, grades, whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's just no risk. Like you already hit the ladder, and then now it's like, okay, can I hit it big and then go Power 5? You know what I mean? That kind of jump is just
Yep.
gone.
Yep. 100%.
But then that's the cool thing too. I feel like with you working at Tread versus when we were at Ward is like the level of guys you see now. Before it was very minute. Like there'd be a couple guys that like we're in pro ball, but no big hitters. You know what I mean? There was no
Mhm.
big money guys rolling in. But then now it's like the range of guys you see. You know what I mean? It's like elite high school kids or even average high school kids trying to gain an edge versus also MLB All Stars now going in there. So I mean, I feel like that's a cool vantage point. You have to all of this is at least seeing like, okay, this is the way everything's shifting, and then it's
Yeah.
like take things like, okay, all the pro guys that did this a certain way can do that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like you at least get
100%.
to view like the whole realm of it versus when being a Ward, it was more just the range was way less of guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's definitely a way broader spectrum to kind of pull from guys. Just like I have athletes all the way from high school, obviously, to like the MLB, and just hearing how they think about the games in different terms. Like I've got guys literally committing mid major, and like we were just touching on, like their plan is like, dude, I want to go mid major and I want to be out of here in like 1 year, or I want to be out of here in 2 years. Like if I can get like, they're like, how many innings do I need to get? You think like how many good innings do you think I need to get to transfer like to X school? And it's just like a different strategy and like and kind of like training for that, as opposed to maybe you have a guy that's like 88, 91 going to JUCO and you're like, dude, we're in for 2 years. Like we can kind of set up a longer term plan. It's like now you've got guys going like freshman year to like a mid major and they're like, dude, I want to transfer this year. And so it kind of changes things. From a standpoint is like maybe you program a little differently, like maybe you hit like VO phase now, whatever, like to try to get them that jump to kind of accomplish their goals, right? Because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Is like I'm just kind of an advisor or consultant, as you will. Like you tell me your goals, and then I tell you like this is what I think best course of action would be based on my experience.
Yeah,
Do
no,
you think
100%.
do, do you think we're seeing like an uptick in guys? It's weird because, Trey and I both play in the Northwoods League and they expand, they expand, they expand. Yet I feel like we're seeing this like exponential uptick in guys that choose to not play summer ball despite being highly talented because of like what you just talked about, where they're saying, okay, I need to gain X miles an hour in order to go to Y school. Um, it's a really weird phenomenon happening where the Northwoods League has been regarded as this league with a high amount of talent, but now you're seeing them up to, I think it's 22 or 24 teams, and they're running through 80 guys a summer. Do you think that there's a really like a huge uptick in guys that are choosing facility life over summer ball in the with the preference of, I guess, doing everything they can to find the next school without actually playing games?
Yeah, I think there is, and I think it makes honestly like logical sense from the athlete standpoint. Like I think we've
Absolutely.
all heard horror stories like from summer ball. It's like I can get, especially like for instance, I'll just use Tread as an example, like live ABs, twice a week, every week, like tons of quality arms going, quality bats that you're facing against. Like we're facing, high school PGL Americans, professional hitters, like you get professional catchers. Like the experience is actually pretty solid from a pitching standpoint. Like everything's on hit tracks, get your tracking data guaranteed. And you get to kind of avoid the bus rides and the shitty meals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And from the athlete standpoint, like I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think there's only going to be a subcategory of coaches that are like, hey, like I'm anti gym guy. if you're like 93, 95. Like, I think at the end of the day, everyone's going to be able to tell, like, okay, this dude has stuff. Like, we're going to give him a chance.
I mean, overall, it's great. You know, I played in the indie ball league out here in Michigan, where it's 4 teams, 1 stadium, and not that it's the same as facility environment, but what you're able to do for overall training economy by simply avoiding the team travel is amazing, honestly, and it feeds right into the fall ball schedule as well because you're not traveling a ton for that either.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because I feel like the only thing that's the weird thing though about baseball too is like, dude, no other sport plays in the summer
Right.
for another 85 games. Like if you look at college basketball, like those pro AMs that go on, like that's pretty much it. Pre-draft, NFL, you just train for the combine. But that's what's crazy. But like even going off like the live AB thing, like the closest thing that I remember that me and you, Max, have done in the past was over COVID when we did that the Sandlot game in Detroit.
Yeah.
That was the closest thing, and me being a junior college guy and one of I think it was like 2 or 3 college kids, and everybody else is in pro ball. You got Matt Boyd, Hunter Brown. You can Max knows a lot of these guys personally a lot better than I do, but it's me as a 19-year-old throwing against a guy that was a first round draft pick 4 years ago, and it's like this guy's probably the best hitter I'm going to face in the next like 2 or 3 years. So like,
I wish we could have done more of those, but like that day, you remember Trey? That day we had 70 guys at the park.
No, exactly. It literally like there was literally 3 college guys. Everybody else is a minor league guy from the east or west side that drove 3 hours in the middle of COVID to go play. And then you would know the high school better, but like dude, it was a dump. It legit was like from the Sandlot. Everybody gets 1 inning, go blow it out, and we got guys hitting 100. Like,
now that you've called it a dump, I won't name the high school, but that was the first day. That was the first day. You know, you mentioned Hunter Brown, outstanding pitcher. I got to see him pitch at Wayne State through the years and whatnot. That was the first day he was sitting 98 to 101 on Rapsodo. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it was nuts. But like the thing too is like me as a 19-year-old, it's just like, dude, like this is like it doesn't get better than this. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like what team could I possibly play against in junior college? Even though like where I went, like the teams we play were pretty good, but like this was like a different level. You know what I mean? It's like this guy was a double A all-star, and then this guy's a fringe big leaguer who is going to get Rule 5 this year. Like dude, it was absurd, which is like crazy. The shift hasn't happened earlier. You know what I mean?
You're probably getting high school guys begging all the time to face those big league dudes.
Yeah. I mean, they kind of put the clamps on it a little bit. It's like, all right, like you can come in at this time knowing that like those guys aren't going to be in gym at that time. Like, he's just kind of like, oh yeah, man, I don't know. He's just not in here. Meanwhile, like in the background, it's like, all right, dude, like we got to get this guy in here later. Like he's definitely going to be fangirling over like these guys that are in here.
Yeah, 100%.
There's like a terrible look.
How do you guys manage? You know, I guess I see Tread from the outside looking in. I haven't been to the facility. It looks beautiful. Like it looks like everything a player could ask for, honestly. How do you guys manage the social media aspect? Because I feel like everything I see, you guys dominate the TikTok platform. You guys do a great job with that. That's something that we're planning on doing as a podcast ourselves. But how do you guys manage only putting, and I don't want to say only because I don't know if I see all of it, but how do you guys manage putting majority or an overwhelming majority of those guys simply being the big league guys? Is it just because you know that that's going to farm the most engagement, or do you guys have high schoolers at times that'll be like, hey, why don't you guys kind of show our progress as well?
Honestly, a better question for the content team. That's like I know
You guys have
like
a content team, guys.
Yeah, whole content team. Like I'm not even involved with that at all. If we want like a specific like high quality behind the view bullpen view, like I just like sign a little sheet or whatever, like fill out a form, and they just show up with like super sick gear and just film everything like mic'd up, like everything's dope, super high quality. So it's like kind of like the unspoken rules, like don't kind of sign up for a pin unless it's going to be electric, and then like the coach is just like, hey, I need this video because this guy's a free agent, needs to get signed, or you know, like we're trying to actually get a video to send to his agent or whatever it may be. And they kind of just use that video, I think, and kind of clip it up and do whatever they want.
I just saw that video before we jumped on to the kid who just signed with the Rays. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but you want to talk about electric? Boy, that pen was electric.
Yeah, dude, his story's crazy. You want to talk about injuries? Like, I think he had some sort of like knee replacement. Like, he used to throw really hard. I don't want to like misquote a story thing, but like I know he used to throw really hard, got knee replacement, and then it took like 2.5 years to get back, and now he just came back and he's like 97 to 100.
Shout out Tread.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you can touch on like the power of that though, because I mean, there's been multiple guys, besides him that have come out of there, especially with like the pro day. So I mean, like I don't know, just kind of touch on like how that would work at a place like Tread, like the power of, I guess, their ability to get guys signed. You know what I mean? Like obviously you got to go in
Yeah.
and do stuff, but just like kind of how does that process work on your end as a throwing guy there?
As a throwing guy, so like as a coach, obviously, if I have the inclination that like this dude has the stuff, like we're kind of at a spot, I've got a few guys right now, like former affiliate time, former big league guys, like free agents, whatever. And I'm like, dude, if this guy doesn't get a shot, like there's one guy that they actually post pretty often. His name's Dakota Chalmers. He's like a former third rounder, really high signing bonus guy out of high school. And like this dude is the easiest like 94 to 97 top eight I've ever seen with an absolute 86-mile-an-hour banger. And I'm like, dude, if this guy does not have an affiliate job at age 26, like I don't know what anyone's doing. Like, how can we not sign this? Like, it's so easy. Like you can pull up the video. I'm sure they posted it. Like I think they posted it like 2 days ago or something. Um, but yeah, so like it's just kind of like you get in contact with the people that kind of like are in the ear of teams constantly, especially the guys that talk to agents a considerable amount. Like these players usually have their own agents as well that are helping on the back end as well. That's why it's so important to get that high quality video, the verified data, edge video, everything, and get that to those agents so they can kind of work their thing on the back end as well.
No, 100%. And then, do you guys ever find like conflicts, I guess, with that? I mean, because I mean, being an agent and then also being a separate entity as a facility, you know what I mean? Like, so they could see differently with that kind of thing. So, I mean, like, is that relationship kind of hindered at times just due to the fact that like agent might say one thing, player says another thing?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely have heard that there have been some like pretty significant conflicts in the past between like agent, player, coach, tread, and large, whatever, maybe like team, org, whatever. I think in general, just trying to communicate with everybody like as openly as possible, and then having like a solid reasoning behind what you're saying. Like you don't even have to say like I don't have to be right, but like when I say like when I'm talking with an agent and a player, it's like this is my reasoning. It's based on this experience or this research or whatever. I'm not saying like this is the fix or this is 100% going to work, but this is at least like kind of what I'm thinking as a possible solution. And I think as long as you're kind of communicating in those terms, like everyone's at least respectful. You know what I mean? No one's going to just like shit all over you. It's like as long as everyone's kind of on the same page. I think where people get their toes stepped on is like when you leave them out completely. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, 100%, 100%.
This episode is presented by Rake Baseball Company. If you want the best apparel within the game of baseball, you need to head over to rakebaseballcompany.com and use code CURVE15 to get 15% off. Rake Baseball Company has it all. They have different designs, they have different colors for different teams, and they even offer various apparel for different positions on the field. I personally have worked with Rake Baseball Company on multiple occasions now, and the owner is always taking care of me. So again, do yourselves a favor. Head on over to rakebaseballcompany.com and use code CURVE15 for 15% off. Again, that's CURVE15 for 15% off.
So, kind of getting back to like the rehab aspect of it with, I don't know, your injury history and like all the stuff that's gone with yours. How, I mean, obviously you've seen different perspectives of like the surgeon's written stuff of like what they demand, physical therapists, individual teams, certain orgs, colleges, wherever, you know what I mean? Like the people that are writing it. So what kind of things have you seen as far as like what the rights and wrongs and kind of what you believe in as far as the rehab process? I mean, you can use examples from any of your endeavors with each, but just kind of like the things in which you're like, I'm out on this, I'm here for this. What kind of beliefs do you have, in your role of also helping guys out?
For sure. I guess I'll start this out with just like a disclaimer that I'm not a doctor. But in my own experience, right? It's like if you look at the incentives of doctors and PTs, it's like they aren't really incentivized to get you back out there like as soon as possible. And they don't really understand, I guess, like the playing career like timeline, right? So the way they define a successful rehab is just you being back in game, right? So Trey, like with your torn labrum, if you were ever 88, 90, and the Orioles put you back in a game, they would literally mark that down on their sheet as a successful rehab because you're like physically playing the game.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you and I both know, like with you being up to 98, that would be an absolute catastrophe. Like that is the most failed rehab of all time. Like this guy is physically not even playing the game the same way he was before. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't even be
Yeah.
enjoyable. And so understanding the differences in like how PTs and doctors label a successful rehab versus how you would label a successful rehab. And then on that same token, kind of understanding that they're not incentivized to push you in any meaningful fashion, right? So they're kind of, if they were to mess up your rehab and get labeled as the PT or doctor that like does bad surgeries or re-blows guys out, right? Like, oh, my PT like re-blew me out. Like that's like a death sentence for them PT wise. And I'm sure there's like a lot of like insurance implications and things like that. Like we're gonna stop sending we're not gonna pay for insurance for this guy to go to this PT because we've had to pay for 2 other surgeries to get redone, right? So there's just like a lot of like money and things like that, so they're actually incentivized to just like string you along on this very long timeline because it's the safest possible thing. So like you coming back from labrum, you could probably get on the mound and throw 95 again in 6 months, like I did. But there's like a 95% chance that would go okay. Or if you wait 3 more months, there's like a 99% chance, right? So it's like they were talking like very minor percentage points of like you just waiting longer is kind of like what they're incentivized to do just because it is such a bad look for them to have a guy get rehurt.
Yeah, no, totally. And then kind of how do you, I guess, how did you go about like figuring it out your own way? You know what I mean? Like at least physically with your own rehab, like you discussed the, doing your own TJ rehab at Memphis, but like how does one find out how to do it themselves? You know what I mean? Versus knowing like that kind of like the business aspect of it, but like the actual physical repping everything out and doing it yourself. Like how did you come about that?
For sure. It's a little bit different per injury. And I think I got a little bit better about it as I went. But for instance, like the process with this labrum, it's like, all right, I'm going to like learn exactly how the surgery is performed. I'm going to learn everything there is about the labrum. Specifically, when you're talking about like how much you can push it, be like blood supply to the injured area. And so what you'll know is like the labrum actually doesn't have a good blood supply at all. And so what that's actually like good as far as like pushing things go because it's essentially fixed. So like your labrum is like this like soft
Mm-hmm.
bowl, has a tear in it. They tie a knot in it, and you walk out, and it's like a passive structure. It's not like a hamstring muscle or anything like that. Like it's just there supporting the humerus. Like there's nothing happening to this. Like there's nothing going to the labrum to flex it or manipulate it in any way. So like once it's tied and it's fixed, and the shape is kind of reformed, it's kind of good to do its job again. And so once I kind of dove into like what the surgery is, what the labrum actually is, how the body like heals it, or like what its actual supporting function is, that's when I kind of put together a plan. Like, okay, like it's fixed day I walk out of surgery. I'm fixing everything around it. Like kind of strengthening the rotator cuff and things like that. So the labrum doesn't re-tear again, or like the humerus has an easier job of like being centrated. But yeah, it's like that's just kind of where I would start is like if I were to get TJ like for the first time, pretending I had already had it, I would go in, see exactly how the surgery is performed, what goes into that. Obviously, like with TJ, you can't really exactly push it right out of the gates as much because they've literally drilled holes in your bones and things like that have to kind of like heal and like
Mm-hmm.
secure around the anchors and things like that. So like I think step one is just really understanding like what the surgery is and how they fixed it. And from there, you get to kind of understand, like, okay, this is what happens. So like, for instance, with the TJ, like, how long a simple search would be like, how long does it take the holes to kind of refill in your bone, like to heal in your bones? And they'd be like, okay, that takes like 10 weeks. It's like, okay, like, so I'm probably not doing anything super meaningful for at least 10 weeks. Or, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you just kind of
Yeah.
start to put these rough timelines in place once you kind of understand what goes into everything.
Do you think that's kind of given you, and I can't speak for the rest of the tread staff in itself, but has that given you some level of a preference in terms of being the guy to kind of help write return to throw protocols based on the injury at hand?
I've definitely kind of got this like this title, I guess, if you will, of like the labrum guy or like the shoulder guy. So like guys will have like impingements, labrum guys that are like kind of, pretty extended post-op. Maybe they're 8, 9 months. They're not exactly seeing the results they'd want, or they've kind of hit a wall in their rehab. And I've kind of become the de facto guy for that. I think like I probably have like 10 labrum guys at any given time. I've always got some TJ guys. Like everybody has a few TJ guys, I think. But the labrum, especially, I know I have like a higher percentage of my athletes that are assigned to me, like are definitely the shoulder guys, and just trying to like kind of walk them through, not pretty much what I just told you, right? Is like kind of walking through their surgery, figuring out what exactly
Sure.
they had done. And obviously, like, and I told Trey, like, I gave him a little roadmap, like, dude, as soon as you get the surgery done, like, you need to start diving into this stuff because I'll get these guys that are 7, 8, 9 months post op, and we're missing like all of our ER. We don't have full active range. And it's just a shit show, right? Like, arm actions are really pushy, like, they botched the entire return to throw. And at that point, it's very, very difficult, especially with something like labrum. It's like you're kind of like chipping away a little bit at a time.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas like if you would have just been on top of it from day one post op, you never would have ran into this problem.
So you want guys coming to tread basically right out of post op almost, in a
Yeah,
sense.
for sure, especially labrum. Especially labrum. I think TJ, there's still a lot of merit for it as well, even though you're going to be in your brace and be pretty limited. I think from keeping everything else in check, which I think is neglected, right? Like, I think a lot of guys get in their brace and they kind of neglect, like, dude, you can be ripping like scat pinches, elevations, depressions, protraction, retraction. You can be doing all of your spine stuff, all of your hip stuff. Like, I think, a lot of programs and a lot of PTs, you'll get stuck in the brace, and until you get it off, they're basically just like, oh, well, when you come in, we'll work a little passive range. We'll do some forearm stuff and then you're done. Like, they completely neglect everything else that you could be improving on even before, or to be even better than it was before, because you get 4 months to essentially do like correctives and that kind of thing.
There's quite
Yeah, because
literally always something you can be doing to get better.
For sure.
yeah, no, and then yeah, that's why I'm really grateful that I know Drew well enough to be able to bounce like this kind of thing off of, because even in my case, that was the thing he told me too, and it's like after surgery, it's not something you want to do, but once you get going and you start moving around, like, you feel better. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're stuck in the sling, especially when you're on like pain meds. The stitches are still, and you're gonna feel like absolute hell. But then it's like, okay, the second week and you start getting going. Like, I felt like even just because I was simply moving around, even if it's just doing spinal flows, you know what I mean, in the sling, where it's like this, like, you can't move it. It can't come, like, your arm's pinned, so it's like you can't hurt it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to cause myself pain, but even just the simple fact of like getting out and moving around as much as you can, like, dude, I even feel light years ahead of where I'm at now. And I was talking to me the other day about it. It's like T-spine, even after being in it for 4.5 weeks, like, I don't feel like a brick. I still feel like I did pre-surgery. You know what I mean? And then talking
Yeah.
with the horror stories with you at times, it's like that's a huge, I guess, step up. So no, it's 100% got
100%.
merit to it.
I think, you also touched on one thing that I've dealt with, maybe not as severe, but one thing that I've dealt with numerous times in my career, and that's kind of impingements. Talk about the difference in severity of impingements, if there is one, and kind of what your optimal, maybe not return to throw, it could be continue to throw, what your optimal progression is with that and finding a way through it.
For sure. So I think I kind of like to start by identifying whether it's like internal or external, and then like where the symptoms are. So, like, what are you getting? A lot of like post cuff stuff? Is it like really up here in the bicep tendon? Is your trap just like turned on 10? Is that causing some pain up here at the top? And kind of like identifying some things like that. And then in my experience, whatever it may be, you probably want to just touch on everything. So I like to kind of generally just focus on centrating the humerus. And I actually like a lot of what like Armored Heat does in this regard. I think they actually have a lot of good stuff on the impingement side of things. And I know they've helped a lot of guys, even at Tread, clear up like some of their impingement stuff. So like they'll do like some of the lateral hangs. It's like my goal is to get away from like standard ER IR stuff that you get like if you just go to a PT. They're going to give you like ERIR, maybe some ISOs, maybe some like sleeper stretch or something, and they're going to tell you to like do that for 2 or 3 weeks and you're done. I really do like kind of the way Armored Heat focuses it around like your impingement is a result of like dysfunction like at the scap in the serratus. Something is happening to where like we're closing down more than we should, or vice versa, like in the front or back or whatever it may be, and causing that discomfort. So kind of just taking like that holistic, like all I guess just like the entire musculature approach rather than just like focusing on, oh, like you're lacking IR, let's just crank you into the sleeper stretch. It's like, no,
Right.
like we need to like actually take a look at the scaps, take a look at the serratus, and just make sure we're opening up enough space everywhere, not just like in the one area we're feeling symptoms.
I will say I started this is the first off season I've had any sort of experience with it, but I started doing armored heat this winter through the facility I train at here in Michigan. And it's unbelievable, man. Like my shoulder feels 1,000 times better. And it's just the consistent daily work. Not only is it great on the physical side, but the mental side where you know you're getting that extra work in. It's pretty awesome, honestly. I love it. I don't know how much you guys incorporate it there. It sounds like you guys do quite a bit, but um I love that armored heat stuff.
For sure. For sure. And they're not doing anything crazy. I just think they've done like a really good job of kind of packaging like arm care in like a very digestible way that makes
Yeah,
it very easy to follow. You know what I mean? Like they didn't invent like all of these exercises or anything, but the
right.
way that they've laid it out for athletes and things like that, I think it makes it very easy to apply in a way that's not like I remember when I was at Memphis, it would be all right, we have like Tuesday, Thursday arm care day, and there's like 12 things on the board. They're all 3 by 10, and you're in there for an hour just like cooking your shoulder.
Yeah.
Whereas like armored heat, you know what I mean, with the daily stuff, you have like 3, 4 things. You hit it every day. Like it's just a lot more digestible, in my opinion.
And it's segmented based on the throwing day that you have too. Like it's a good setup. I guess to kind of shift topics, um, you mentioned just how many hours you're working at tread, maybe not specifically, but it feels like you're working a lot of hours at tread.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage the volume of clientele you have, and how do you still write fresh programming? Like, how do you stay away from kind of slipping into that trap where it is, okay, they got this issue, this issue, this issue. Okay, we'll do this, this, and this to fix it. Right. It's the same for every guy that has those issues.
Right. Yeah, I think part of it too is just getting exposed to new problems. So like when you do have the volume of clientele that we have, even if it's not my own specific athlete, right? Like you'll have a guy like that I'm in the same office as, and he has TOS, and then we're talking through like, bro, like his TOS symptoms got way better, and then just having the conversation with a coworker of like, dude, really, like, please walk me through that in case I have a guy in the future that has TOS symptoms or whatever, like in and just kind of that kind of environment, I think is how it avoids a lot of that stagnation is just like you're constantly being exposed to problems, whether it be with your own athletes or through like any athlete in shred. The coach is like, if it's a difficult problem, like it may be TOS symptoms, or it may be like some guy kind of has a yips or whatever, like everyone kind of comes together and takes a look, and like you'll hear some of the best solutions you've ever heard, like most like something you never would have thought of, because there's like 4 or 5 highly qualified people there in the same room, and you're like, dude, oh my gosh, like I never would have thought to do that, but that makes so much sense. So I just think that like that type of environment is what kind of keeps it from happening.
Are you more like open to athlete collaboration on the long like along the way as well? Like take a guy like Trey, right? Where you've worked with him for a long time. He knows his body well, you know him well. In addition to the staff collaboration as well. Like I guess that's the entire question. There's really not much more I can put on that.
Yeah, I think I have like my friends or whatever at Tread that I would like really, really trust their opinion. Like I'd let them have an opinion on anybody and I'd listen to them out. Like anybody, seriously. It could be guys that I've worked with for 5, 6 years. Like they could just see something that I'm not seeing, especially like there's a couple guys that I talk to a lot that are much more versed on like the postural stuff, whether it be like PRI or like some of the Connor Harris stuff, and just that kind of things, like doing all the eldoas and like seeing how your pelvis sits like at rest and things like that. And they'll just notice some stuff that I'll admit I'm just not very well versed in. Like I'm not going to be able to just look at your posture and tell you all your problems. um but if I think these guys are very, very smart, and if they told me something, I would 100% listen to them and talk about applying it and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like you just have your group of guys that you trust their opinion because they've proven that they can solve problems and they're really smart.
You mentioned a massive minor detail that makes such a big difference with the coach, especially for me. And I'm sure Trey's the same way. But when you don't know the solution, you don't pretend to know. And I think that is so valuable. That is something I've noticed in terms of me being on the coaching side of things, but even me being on the performing side of things. If I can trust the guy that's running my throwing enough to where he says, I don't know the solution, that's awesome. That honest communication is massive in the whole process.
Yeah, 100%. Just like opening it up to collaboration. Like I've literally seen guys make incredible transformations by applying some of that PRI stuff and stuff like that. Like, and it's something I'm trying to learn more about. But at this time, like I can't just like look at you and be like, dude, I think we need to do this. You know what I mean? I'm just not to that level yet, like they are.
What's the cliff notes of PRI? Because you use that acronym twice, and I kind of want to know what does it stand for and what's like the cliff notes of it.
Yeah, it's Postural Restoration Institute is what PRI stands for.
Okay.
And so you've seen guys do it, I promise you 100%. You just don't
Sure.
even realize it. It's going to be like the stuff where, you've got a balloon in your mouth and you've got your feet up on the wall, or like you're squeezing a foam roller between your legs and you're like reaching. It's just some stuff like that, like kind of managing the rib cage, managing the pelvis, like how they stack on top of each other.
Okay.
The idea is like, what am I trying to explain? So if you were chronically in extension at your resting posture, like you were just like in an extended position with the spine, we wouldn't expect you to get more extension on the mound, or you
Right.
wouldn't have, because you're already there. And so the goal, like I would prescribe you some exercises that bring you to a more neutral rib tuck position. So that way, when you get on the mound, you can access extension rather than already being there. Like that type of thing, like seeing where you already are.
Next time I see a guy with a balloon in his mouth, PRI, I know what's
Yeah,
up.
100%.
So then kind of, I mean, if you can touch on it too, the amount of, because you obviously work a lot of hours, and then kind of just the day in the life, I guess, of what you're doing, because obviously, like, yeah, you have all your in-gym guys, but then also like your remote guys. So how do you balance that, as well as like obviously being a real living, breathing person
Yeah.
who does baseball in college, and then even training full time plus doing what we were doing at Ward, I mean, just kind of elaborate on that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Day in the life is pretty, I guess, standard. I don't know. I've gotten used to it at this point, but it's like going at 9. And you're gonna like kind of, like I like to sit down, catch up on programs that I need to update, text some guys back, whatever it may be. Then from 10:30 to 2, 3 o'clock, you're gonna have your in-gym guys, watching them throw pins, kind of working one-on-one plyo drills, whatever they may be doing that day. Maybe we go to the park and long toss or whatever it may be, like really watching their throwing, maybe watch some of their lifting or whatever if they have any questions. And then like take a couple calls, mix in there. Like it's really not too crazy. And then like I put in a lot more hours that frankly I'm not even required to, like based on my contract at Tread. Like I do a lot of like extra stuff, like I mentioned on True Media, kind of researching some stuff like with the boys, like kind of like trying to find the next little thing, like what could give our guys an advantage, looking at video, whatever it could be. And then like sauna, cold tub, like my own personal lifting, usually in the afternoons as well. But that's kind of like the day again, and it's usually like a long day, but I make it longer than it has to be, I think, just because I'm living in a city by myself. Like my family's all in Nashville. And so like just when you're kind of in a city by yourself, you've only, like I've got a few work friends that are in a similar situation, you know what I mean? Long distance relationships, just young guys mostly. It's like we'll just kind of put in the hours and see what we can find, maybe go golf, maybe whatever. But for the most part, like that's what your whole world revolves around, like when you're in a city by yourself. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, 100%. I mean, that's kind of why we started this, and that was in the first episode. Is basically just like, okay, how did this come about? And it's like, even for me, it's rehabbing at the complex the entire off season. Like, yeah, I have a roommate, but in pro ball, just because you have a roommate doesn't mean they're your best friend. You know what I mean? It's not like we're hand in hand doing everything together. So it's like you're your own guy still at the same point. It's just, oh, I live with my coworker. Essentially, is a lot of the time how it goes. So I mean, no, I totally get that as far as People do it different ways. Like you pick up hobbies, or you dive more into like what you do if you enjoy it that
Yeah,
much. That's why I think it's pretty cool
for sure.
that
It's
you know
hard.
they
It's
also
hard,
give
and
you the
like
resources to research it on your own time.
we kind of talked about in the first episode, but it's hard, like especially in your rehab process, Trey. And I haven't gone through it through the length that you have, but um, the the purpose, right? The self purpose, when what we're here to do is to throw baseballs or coach baseball, and if that gets taken away from you, it's like, what the hell am I supposed to do, right? So, um, I think that's a big reason why we started this, having another hobby outside the field, but also from the informational perspective. But I guess kind of circling back to the topic at hand, like, what is it that you do? You mentioned golf, but like, what do you do to get away from it sometimes?
Not much, honestly, just golf. Like seriously, like I put in a lot of hours, thinking about coaching, thinking about baseball, thinking about like training. And then like I think my one release is kind of like golf, maybe I don't know, like just my own lifts or whatever. Like, but even then, I mean, you know how it is. You can be doing your own lift and not necessarily even be training for anything, but you'll just be like, oh, like what if I, like was in an offset 45 when I did this? Like that kind of like biases ER. Well, like you start coaching like yourself in ways.
Sure.
So it's hard to turn it off, and I think that's honestly like a good thing. Like I think it gives me like an advantage just being so consumed by it.
How is the golf game?
It's getting there. We're at a 5 handicap right now. And we started the year at about like a 9. So we brought it down quite a bit living in Charlotte by ourselves.
That's, yeah, dude, that's impressive. That's impressive. I personally never golf, but my fiance's family, her brother is a scratch golfer and her dad's like a 3 handicap. So like, yeah, dude, just come play with us. And I'm like, you guys do not want me to
Yeah.
drag you down. I can't be on the same course as you.
I bet you can rip it though. You know how to rotate.
At I'm a great top golfer. You give me that stock club, I will, yeah, I'll put some work into that thing.
Yeah, with the shaved grip that you can't hold on to, and your hands are
Yeah.
just
Your hands are
melting.
greasy as hell from eating like mozzarella sticks. You're like, all right,
We now take a break from this interview to promote one of our supporting sponsors, Minor League Coffee. Started by two brothers currently in minor league baseball, Minor League Coffee has all of your coffee needs. We all know that coffee tastes better when you get the recipe right, all on your own. With all sorts of blends, Minor League Coffee has everything you need to get your day off to the best start possible. Head on over to minorleaguecoffee.com today and use code CURVE5 for 5% off. That's minorleaguecoffee.com, and with code CURVE5.
Max, tell me, like obviously I've heard a little bit about your story, but can you just like fill me in a little bit about kind of like I know you like learned to throw hard and stuff like that, but kind of just fill me in a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So I played 4 years of Division II ball up at Northwood University up in Michigan. Had success in regards to results, but at the end of the day, I probably wasn't where I needed to be. I had a couple pre-draft meetings with the Rangers and the Pirates. So I thought I was doing the right stuff. Graduated college, and I was really starting to get like self-conscious about my weight because I was always the big guy. Turns out I was 304 pounds when I graduated college. Big boy, mass equals gas, right?
Snacks. The nickname was Snacks Bane.
Snacks Bane. I actually had it on a glove. At one point, I had it on a glove. Um, so went and played for the Growlers as a graduate contract just to stay fresh for the draft. Didn't end up panning out. Obviously, it was last year the 40-round draft, but didn't end up panning out. And good thing it didn't, because I was just not ready. Knowing what I know now, I just wasn't ready. Played in the USPBL for a summer and basically tailored my entire development around kind of what they preach, which is the DVS system. And I think it's a unique approach to pitcher development, although I don't think it is parallel with the direction of the game in terms of velocity being at the forefront of what teams are looking for. You know, I don't know that's a knock on them, but they kind of score your delivery based on how healthy it is, or projectably healthy it is. And, guys like Trevor Bauer, Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander, they're sitting in the, 8 to 12 range, and their scale 0 to 24. So 0, kind of like I mentioned in the first pod, but like 0 is you're going to tear your shit tomorrow, and 24 is you're going to be able to throw for as long as you want. The problem
Right.
is that most of the guys at 22 to 24, and granted there were exceptions, but most of the guys in those 20 plus range, they're going to be your high 80s guys, maybe. A lot of them were even mid 80s. So, I kind of subscribe to believe anybody can throw forever if they're, 85 to 90, you know,
Mm-hmm.
especially with where we've come today as a, developmental industry. So I left the USPBL at the end of at the end of that season, basically said, I don't really want to play another game here again because there wasn't anything about me that was separating myself from the rest of the roster in terms of, finding a way to get an affiliate contract. So started working at Primetime Velocity, really got introduced to all the driveline throwing protocols, the ideology itself. Hey, buddy. The ideology itself, and really kind of embraced it all. And that was when I started to really change my diet, really started doing everything I could to throw hard. And really in 4 months, man, I went from topping 92 to topping 97. And there were a lot of days where I was alone in that gym, but we kind of figured it out. I got to train with Trey a lot. Thankfully, he was, a nice guy to like bounce stuff off of. And obviously we became best friends in the process. But from that point on, really being able to start throwing hard, I signed in January of 2020 with the Cubs, topping 97. Went to my first camp. It was still about 260, 265. Really wasn't where I needed to be still. Came home for the COVID summer, dropped another 30, and then went back the following camp, sitting 96, 99.
That's tight.
That was sick.
That was the coolest thing too, at least watching it, was just like, obviously you can see the difference in like how his shirt is like on, like fits on him. You know what I mean? When you roll into the gym, and it was like every 5 or so, it was like, all right, like it's going up. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're visually watching him linearly do this just to the
Right.
moon every week. It was consistent. It wasn't like, oh, we need to clean up his arm action. It was literally, dude, just take a rock out of the backpack you're wearing
Yeah.
every week, and you're just going to move faster, which is cool though, because it's the complete opposite of what every Jamoke ever says of like, hey, dude, get huge and just throw hard. And it's like, no, because you slowed yourself down. And like literally was like you were wearing a backpack full of rocks
And
and
it's
then trying
funny,
to throw
dude.
hard.
Like, it's
Right.
funny. I'm down to 225 right now. And my plan was I came home at about 240. My plan was to go down to 225 and like kind of build back up to a healthy 230, like put 5 really good pounds back on.
Mm-hmm.
And I got all the way down to 223. Putting the weight back on is hard. I've never struggled to put on weight. I'm now at a point where putting the weight back on is like difficult. And that's cool. I've never had that problem.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
that was the cool thing too, because it's like, dude, even back then when I was in junior college, it was like, dude, I was trying to get to 225 as fast as I could, and it was like, damn, dude, I'm like 212 again today. Like this blows. Like I'm trying to eat as much as I physically can, and then now it's at the point where it's like, dude, I weigh almost 20 pounds more than him. You know what? 3-4 years later, and it's just like kind of
right.
neat how it
Yeah.
all ends up working out if you stick with it.
How the
For sure.
turntables turn.
But
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
to end on though, since so again we talked about the range of guys that at least you see in gym with like MLB All Star to average high school guy trying to gain an edge. How do you see the game moving as far as like, okay, this is going to be like a hit? So for example, like in the late 2010s when hop became a thing, and it's like, oh god, why can nobody hit this 92 center cut, but it like on TV it looks like it's 105. You know what I mean? Or like you play catch the guy. Like so what do you think is going to be the next big hitter combo? Like this is gross, or like it could be here now, just like your take on like where you see stuff moving.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like in general, like as the game progresses, like the edges get smaller and smaller. So like hop was like a big breakthrough for like whiff. I think like the next thing people are gonna start playing with are like horizontal and vertical approach angles, like having unique angles coming at the hitter. Like, but I think that in general is a relatively smaller edge than what it was like to face like a 20 vert heater at negative 3.1 VAA for the first time. You know what I mean? It's just like spamming that, I guess, is like so like the edges get smaller and smaller that guys are trying to obtain, I guess. Like the death pitch, for instance, like you'll see on Instagram and Twitter, like tread Jordan Montgomery, Pete Fairbanks, like their curveballs are obviously sick, but not everybody can throw that. But that's like an enormous unlock for guys that are able to throw it.
Well done, bro.
Yeah, but I
Well
think
done,
it's
bro.
gonna be I think it's gonna be like some like minute stuff like that. Like, but again, like just reemphasizing like that edge is smaller. Like I think eventually everyone's just gonna throw super hard. But the difference is going to be that it's going to be coming from everywhere. Like you're going to see guys throwing 97 from the hip, like just straight sidearm. You're going to see like more guys like that. Like that's what's going to be kind of sought after. And velo at the end of the day is always going to be like the underlying thing, right? So it's just like the next big thing. Like I think the next big thing gets like smaller and smaller, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
Absolutely.
gaining a lot of velo was like a giant upgrade. Like riding fastballs, seam shifting pitches was like a giant upgrade. But once everybody understands how to do that, how to develop it, and believe me, there's still like a lot of orgs that are way behind on that front. But like eventually everyone's going to catch up. And then these like little advantages get smaller and smaller to like now we're playing with like minute angles coming at the hitter to try to get better matchups against their attack angles and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just the edges get smaller.
What's the next pitch in itself? We had the year of the changeup. We've had the year of the two seam. We've had the year. I mean, splitters are up and coming. What's the next pitch in itself?
I mean, it's probably like shout out to Alex Catcher. It's probably the death ball for real. Like for the guys that can throw it, you're gonna see a lot of like high slot dudes start to throw just hard ass curveballs at
Agreed.
0, -4, or like even have arm side run
Agreed.
at like -5 and just throw the shit out of them.
Completely agree. That thing's going to be unhittable.
So
Yeah,
if you can
it
give
already is. It's
like a
50%
quick
width.
like cliff notes for people that don't understand it, I guess, like a quick like 15-second synopsis.
Yeah. It's so it's going to come from like the high slot. Normally, you're talking about a pitch that is a curveball with around 0 inches horizontal. It can be up to -3, up to, and then ideally like positive arm side run. And then just like hard, usually 82 miles an hour harder, and then like negative VB of like 2 or 3 or more.
Disgusting.
I need the demo on that.
I can't throw it, so
We thank you for we thank you for coming on today, dude. This has been outstanding. We've had a great time. First interview, man. Thank you for popping it for us. Appreciate
absolutely, bro. No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime. You're a beast.
that. Talk soon.
See you guys.
You boss.